What does Judaism teach about the hereafter, about life after death, or perhaps we should say life after life? To be sure, Judaism generally has little to say about the afterlife, since its focus is on living a Torah-observant life in the present tense. Jewish sages and rabbis across the centuries have certainly adhered to a belief that righteous souls will inherit the world to come. Beyond that, however, the ideas are proverbially all over the place. The great rabbi and Jewish philosopher of the Middle Ages, Maimonides, made belief in the next life one of his 13 articles of faith.
The resurrection of the dead is a basic principle of the Torah of Moses. Anyone who does not believe it has no connection with the Jewish nation. But resurrection is only for the righteous. As it states in the commentary on Genesis, reign is for both the righteous and the wicked, but resurrection is for the righteous alone. For how can the wicked be brought back to life, when even during their lives they are considered dead? But the righteous, even when they die, are considered alive.
We shouldn't be surprised that there's an enormous amount of folklore, also known as Agadah in Jewish sources, about the hereafter. A good deal of it goes back to ancient times, which brings to mind an apocalyptic passage in the 12th chapter of the biblical book of Daniel.
At that time, the great prince, Michael, who stands beside the sons of your people, will appear. It will be a time of trouble, the like of which has never been since the nation came into being. At that time, your people will be rescued, all who are found inscribed in the book. Many of those that sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to eternal life, others to reproaches, to everlasting abhorrence.
Many practitioners of Jewish mysticism, or Kabbalah, down through the ages, have advanced a concept called Gilgul, which is the Jewish equivalent of reincarnation. It's also referred to as the transmigration of souls. In Hebrew, the word Gilgul means cycle or wheel. Souls, in Hebrew neshamot, are seen to cycle through lives or incarnations, being attached to different human bodies over time. But in antiquity, there was incredible focus on heaven, which in Jewish folklore came to be called seven heavens. We don't know how the ancient sages derived their visions of heaven, and what they describe sounds like something in a dream state.
Though the heavens and the earth consist of entirely different elements, they were yet created as a unit, like the pot and its cover. The heavens were fashioned from the light of God's garment, and the earth from the snow under the divine throne.
In the creation account of the book of Genesis, we are told that in the beginning the world was formless, in Hebrew tohu, and void, in Hebrew bohu. But ancient folklore, however it came about, attempts to explain what those two important words mean. It goes on to speculate on the emanation of the primordial light, which existed before the sun and stars, and which we might liken to a primitive version of the Big Bang theory. It will illuminate the whole of human history and its evil, being reserved for the righteous in the world to come.
Tovu is a green band which encompasses the whole world and dispenses darkness, and Bohu consists of stones in the abyss, the producers of the waters. The light created at the very beginning is not the same as the light emitted by the sun, the moon, and the stars, which appeared only on the fourth day. The light of the first day was of a sort that would have enabled man to see the world at a glance from one end to the other. Anticipating the wickedness of the sinful generations of the deluge and the Tower of Babel, who were unworthy to enjoy the blessing of such light, God concealed it, but in the world to come it will appear to the pious in all its pristine glory.
To be sure, light is a recurring theme in Jewish folklore, and especially in Jewish mysticism, known as Kabbalah. An important passage in the great Kabbalistic treatise called the Zohar emphasizes this hidden light.
The light created by God in the act of creation flared from one end of the universe to the other and was hidden away, reserved for the righteous in the world that is coming. If the light were completely hidden, the world would not exist, even for a moment. Rather, it is hidden and sown like a seed, giving birth to seeds and fruit. Thereby the world is sustained.
Another passage from the Zohar is equally mysterious.
When the king conceived ordaining, he engraved engravings in the lustre on high. A blinding spark flashed within the concealed of the concealed from the mystery of the infinite.
All of this involves ideas relating to ancient cosmology. After all, ancient Israelites were attuned to the heavens, as were all cultures of antiquity. So we shouldn't be surprised to find folkloric reference to 7 heavens.
Several heavens were created, 7 in fact, each to serve a purpose of its own. The first, the one visible to man, has no function except that of covering up the light during the night time. Therefore it disappears every morning. The planets are fastened to the second of the heavens. In the third, the manna is made for the pious in the hereafter. The fourth contains the celestial Jerusalem, together with the temple, in which Michael ministers as high priest and offers the souls of the pious as sacrifices.
There's a lot to unpack here. It's clear that an ancient author or authors began to develop increasingly visionary experiences. It's a lot like dream interpretation, where nothing is literal. Again, there's the idea of a divine realm or dimension, of which the physical world is a reflection, being clothed by the first heaven, the only heaven visible to human beings. Beyond what is visible lies the dimension of the supernatural, which we may even think of as 6 additional dimensions. It's important to note that while the supernatural isn't something that's been stressed in traditional religion down through the ages, there's no doubt that the biblical writers and the folklorists who came after them were predisposed to supernaturalism. Ancient Jewish storytellers clearly believed that the heavenly host was present with God before the creation event. They believed in an unseen realm where a hierarchy of spiritual beings dwell. They include angels, archangels such as Michael, and sons of God, a phrase used to identify divine beings with a higher level of authority and jurisdiction.
In the 5th heaven, the angel hosts reside and sing the praise of God, though only during the night, for by day it is the task of Israel on earth to give glory to God on high. The 6th heaven is an uncanny spot. There originate most of the trials and visitations ordained for the earth and its inhabitants. Snow lies heaped up there and hail. There are lofts full of noxious dew, storerooms stocked with storms, and cellars holding reserves of smoke. Doors of fire separate these celestial chambers, which are under the supervision of the archangel Metatron. Their pernicious contents defiled the heavens until David's time. The pious king prayed God to purge his exalted dwelling of whatever was pregnant with evil. It was not becoming that such things should exist near the merciful one. Only then they were removed to the earth.
The Israelites believed that there was a divine council or assembly in the heavens, referenced here as the 5th heaven, including the original morning stars or sons of God, who witnessed the creation and the beginning of life on earth. Psalm 82 of the Hebrew Bible describes a divine council meeting to judge certain sons of God, here called the Elohim, for their corrupt rule of the nations. The result of such corruption was, of course, earthly tribulation, the trials of which are stored up in the 6th heaven. This is where we meet the archangel Metatron, who is charged with guarding the celestial chambers. Metatron is prominently mentioned by the author of the book of Enoch, excluded from the Hebrew Bible, but extremely popular among ancient Israelites. Metatron would become a central figure in the centuries to come, as the ideas of Kabbalah were set down in the encyclopedic volume called the Zohar. According to the folklore, the patriarch Enoch did not live out his natural life. The Bible itself simply states that he was not, for God took him. The book of Enoch fills in the details, recounting how the patriarch was not just spirited away, but transformed into a pure flame, literally becoming the archangel Metatron. Now in the heavenly realm, he is a chieftain of the angelic host. He ministers before the throne of glory. He becomes high priest of the heavenly temple, the perfect holy sanctuary, of which the earthly temple is merely a copy. And as minister of wisdom, he guards the keys to the mysteries and secrets of the supernatural world. The divine realm must, of course, be pure and undefiled, and so we are told that on King David's prayers, the so-called pernicious contents were sent down to the earth. That brings us to the seventh heaven.
The seventh heaven, on the other hand, contains naught but what is good and beautiful, right, justice and mercy, the storehouses of life, peace and blessing, the souls of the pious, the souls and spirits of unborn generations, the dew with which God will revive the dead on the resurrection day, and above all, the divine throne, surrounded by the seraphim, the Ophanim, the holy divine beings, that is, the Hayot and the ministering angels.
Notably, there was an actual sect in ancient Israel known as the Pious Ones, or Hasidim, and they may provide special focus for this passage. The rabbinic source, Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, maintains that from the history of humankind and that of Israel, as well as from nature, one may prove that the number 7 plays an important role. And the Kabbalistic treatise, the Sefer Yetzirah, points out that everything physical is determined by 7 limitations: above and below, right and left, before and behind, and its own individual form. As in a dream state, it's a description of an idealized dimension, including adherence to a belief popularized in the first few centuries before the Common Era, namely the physical resurrection of the dead. It was the Pharisee party who offered what the temple priesthood and the Torah itself could not: the world to come. God is not depicted in the vision as Jews were loath to give physical form to the divine image, but various divine beings are witnessed, including the Seraphim, literally burning ones, and the Ophanim, literally wheels, as in the 4 eye-covered wheels that move next to the winged cherubim beneath the throne of God. The Hayot are another class of heavenly beings in Jewish folklore. When it comes to angels, we have an additional testimony from the biblical patriarch Enoch, recounted in the book that bears his name.
I saw 100,000 times 100,000, 10 million times 10 million, an innumerable and uncountable multitude who stand before the glory of the Lord of the spirits.
According to ancient doctrine, God was envisioned in the midst of all the spirits who ever lived or will live on this earth. The spirit that was to be clothed in Adam's body was among these spirits. Jewish Agadah relates this.
With the soul of Adam, the souls of all the generations of men were created. They are stored up in the 7th of the heavens, whence they are drawn as they are needed for human body after human body.
In time, angels, along with the theme of the prophet Ezekiel's vision of the divine chariot throne, became central to the developing world of Jewish mysticism, which came to be called Kabbalah. In addition to Metatron, Enochic literature lists 4 by name: Michael, meaning who is like God; Raphael, God heals; Gabriel, God is mighty; and Uriel, God is my light. Then there is the life of Adam and Eve, which we can link directly with Ezekiel's chariot.
While we were praying, Michael the archangel and messenger of God came to me. And I saw a chariot like the wind, and its wheels were fiery. I was carried off into the paradise of righteousness, and I saw the Lord sitting, and his appearance was unbearable flaming fire. And many thousands of angels were at the right and at the left of the chariot.
But while ancient cosmology was complex and mysterious, ideas about the earth below were equally mystical. The ideal realm was reflected, according to a Platonic matrix of sorts, in the physical plane. The 7 heavens are consequently matched by 7 earths.
Corresponding to the 7 heavens, God created 7 earths, each separated from the next by 5 layers. Over the lowest earth, the 7th, called Eretz, lie in succession the abyss, the Tohu, the Bohu, a sea and waters. Then the 6th earth is reached, the scene of the magnificence of God. It is separated from the 5th earth, which contains Gehenna, and the gates of death, and Abaddon, and the underworld, Sheol. There, the souls of the wicked are guarded by the angels of destruction. The next earth is called Dry, though it is a place of brooks and streams in spite of its name. Then comes the mainland, which contains the rivers and the springs. Tebel, the 2nd earth, is the first mainland inhabited by living creatures, 365 species, all essentially different from those of our own earth. Some have human heads set on the body of a lion, or a serpent, or an ox. Others have human bodies topped by the head of one of these animals. Aside from them, Tebel is inhabited by human beings with 2 heads and 4 hands and feet, in fact with all their organs doubled excepting only the trunk. It happens sometimes that the parts of these double persons quarrel with each other.
Perhaps the worst thing scholars do is to dismiss accounts such as these as pure mythology, when they ought to be understood in a Jungian sense, as we might interpret dreams. It's clear that the ancient Israelites had a much more imaginative sense of the cosmos than what we read in the Hebrew Bible, and many of them must have been well practiced in metaphysics. Far from being static, they believed the earth itself is a restless place, with many layers or regions below. For one thing, the ancient Near East has always been earthquake-prone, and such geologic disturbances may well have fed a belief that the depths of the earth housed a place of eternal punishment, called in Hebrew Gehinnom or Gehenna, as well as Abaddon and Sheol. Moreover, the idea that the souls of the wicked will be locked away as if imprisoned is well attested in the writings of Israel's ancient visionary class of prophets and priests. As for the 365 species of living creatures, there are multiple legends among disparate ancient civilizations of monsters, dragons, goblins, and the like. The late Terence McKenna, ethnobotanist and mystic, spoke of an invisible landscape involving what he called the partial penetration of our cultural space by the transcendental other, including everything from pixies, elves, fairies, and sprites to angels and demons. He even suggested that the ingestion of psilocybin mushrooms had a transformative effect on early Homo sapiens communities, likely shaping the course of human development. Could such practices have impacted early Jewish legends and folklore? Whether or not there's anything to this theory, perhaps there's more to folklore than just myth. Perhaps a lot more. There's so much more to come.